So if you want to go ahead and start by giving us a little bit of an introduction about who you are, your name, what you do, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so my name is Sierra Robinson. Oh my gosh, who am I? Ugh, I guess I'm a fashion designer now. I can like officially call myself that. From South Jersey, went to school in New York, then relocated to Columbus, Ohio to work at Abercrombie and Fitch, out of college. And yeah, like always been interested in design. Definitely knew by like freshman year of high school, this is like what I was gonna do for like the rest of my life. So dedicated my life to it and we're in the trenches with it, but we're loving it still. And yeah, like I guess I'm like a fashion designer, working designer.
Well, a fun thing to know about Sierra is we're actually related. We're cousins, so I think we're considered first cousins if I know my family tree. I
Yes,
think that's what
yes,
they're
first
considered, right?
cousins.
So our moms are sisters, and like she said, she works for Abercrombie and Fitch, and I have on one of the shirts today.
Love it.
So going back to what you're saying about your passion, how did you get into fashion? How did you know that was what you wanted to do? Yeah, give us a rundown.
Yeah, I like went through a lot of different like phases. I feel like when I was younger of like what I wanted to do. I always knew I was more like a creatively inclined person. Like in school, whenever it came down to like writing a paper, doing a project, I was always doing some kind of like, let me draw something, let me play around with markers, let me throw some glitter on something. So I always knew I was like a more creatively inclined person. And for a while I was like, oh, like, oh my God, it's so embarrassing. I was very much into playing The Sims. I was a simmer and I loved a good decorating, building a house. So I was like, for a while being like, oh, I think I'm gonna do like architecture, interior design. Like I'm loving this, like picking out furniture, like this is so cute. So I always knew like design in something was gonna be like, I think further down the line for me. And then was thinking like, oh, like clothes, like you're always gonna need clothes, like fashion's super cool. And then slowly just started getting more and more into that and kind of seeing a lot more opportunities that there were, and being like, I think like I'm gonna do this. So bounced around with like a bunch of different ideas, but always knew that design was gonna be something where I was gonna lean into.
That's awesome. I even remember like when we were younger and I would come visit you, you always were like designing clothes for your like Barbies and stuff. And you would like
Yes,
have them on like the pedestal and you'd be
yeah,
designing their clothes.
literally. Oh my God, I have.
Yes.
She's like one of my inspiration dolls. This is like sophomore year. I made this like doll dress. So Barbie girl, born and raised. And I always
Yes.
have her like on my desk whenever I'm like doing work, being like, oh my God, like remember where I come from, humble beginnings. So yes, definitely that's a part of the story too.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So for you specifically, obviously we're talking about Black history, really um what's that word? Why am I drawing a blank? Not empowering. Oh my gosh, what's the word? Uplifting? I don't know.
Hi.
But we
Uplifting.
are sharing, I guess. So some Black people in the industry. So as a Black woman yourself, what has it been like being in the fashion world?
What has it been like being in the fashion world? It's been really like so far very much like ups and downs. And very like it's just been like very different. Like even in school, because I guess I would consider that like my intro to kind of like being in design school, like learning how to like pattern make and all that stuff. Being in school, it was definitely challenging at times, like very rewarding because like you're in these spaces that, you know, like not too long ago, like we're not really inclusive of us. And now like, you have the opportunity. So it's kind of like a catch 22 sometimes of being like, oh, I'm able to like do this really cool thing, but then also realizing that like not too long ago, I wouldn't have been accepted in this space. And still now in fashion, there's still such a struggle for like Black designers, like Black models getting representation and all of that. So kind of just like recognizing that, but still wanting to like pursue and go forward and do cool things has definitely been like something that I've been like grasping with. Being in this industry, and it has been, really challenging, especially since I'm also in like menswear design. So, I do dabble in women's wear, but I do mostly menswear design too. So like now you're adding like Black woman in like an even more male dominated field than I think like women's wear design is. So it's definitely been like rewarding at times, but also very challenging, like internally for a
Right.
person.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
especially with so many creative outlets and creative things, like, as Black women, like we weren't always accepted, like you said, and it's always been a struggle. Like even now, as I'm trying to do like content and things like that, I mean, I learn all the time that like Black people aren't pushed in algorithms and such. So it's always like a challenge where
Very
we have to
much.
work 2,000 times harder to just be seen.
Yeah.
Um, but going into your fashion experience and what you're doing, how did you become like one of the partners or designers on the Black History Month line for Abercrombie and Fitch?
Yeah, they kind of like approached us with like the idea. They actually approached my friend who is pictured, and she is like one of the main Black graphic designers like on the kids side. So we have
Oh
like
wow.
I'm on men's, she's on kids, and it was originally like a kids kind of like only concept, and then they kind of like brought it to us as being like, oh, we want to make this kind of like an inclusive thing across all the brands. So that's kind of how like we all got involved, like contributing our ideas, which was super cool because like, at first it was just supposed to be that thing, and then they were like, we want to include you guys. So it was really cool that they came to us, and we all kind of like sat down and like brainstormed a bunch of like what we kind of wanted this to be, coming up with the like, for justice for growth kind of like idea and like slogan. So yeah, it was like super collaborative with like all of us, and really just like cool to be a part of. There's not that many of us here too, so literally, but like this is where I mean like catch 22, where it's like there's not that many of us in like this like huge, very large company, but then
Right.
also it's like because there's not that many of us, it really was like me hanging out with my friends, like like I knew a lot of like the people, like I'm cool with a lot of them, like two of them I'm like really good friends with. So it was really just like me and my friends kind of like back at college, like let's bounce ideas off each other and like let's just like create this really cool thing. So it was really cool to like be a part of.
That's awesome. How long have you been at the company?
Coming on 2 years this November. So
Nice. Did you
yeah.
do like an internship before you started there, or was it like right when you graduated, you just applied for a position?
Yeah, I interned with them, and then at the end of the internship they like offered me a position, and the internship was like really fun. It was really like I mean, this was also before COVID, so like
Right.
everything seemed way more fun before COVID. But it was, yeah, like a super fun time, and I was like I could kind of see myself like vibing, like going there for like a little bit. And like it's been a ride so far. So
That's awesome. When you had originally started in fashion, where did you like see yourself? Where were you expecting? Like, what was your end goal, I guess you could say, when you first started?
Well, my end goal is definitely, looking back, so foolish. Oh my gosh, like end goal kind of being like, oh my gosh, like I'll graduate, like work a little bit and then like start my brand at like 26. And now I'm like, hell no, like that is so much work. Like, down the line, I would love to maybe something like down the line, but kind of just realizing to like building up your like network of like people and like having work experience is like very important. And I'm definitely more of like a work oriented person. Like, I thought for a little bit maybe I'll go back to school and like learn more things about design, but I'm definitely just more of like I want to like hit the ground running. I want to like do what I need to do and make these connections, like, get in and out, like
Right.
bob and weave with the employment. So yeah, definitely envisioned myself kind of being in a more like, I don't know, I guess stable center of my
Hmm.
life. But I think that's something that any like young person like kind of looks back on and is like, wow, like I really thought at this point in my life I was gonna like have it all together. And like clearly being like young 20 something things, like we don't often. So but kind of just like more so looking back now and like being like, you know what, enjoy where you're at, enjoy you're here now. It's not a race to like get to the finish line. The only finish line that exists is like in your mind. So just being like, all right, like we're here, we're doing cool stuff, we're surviving, we're living through a global pandemic, like so many things are happening. So
Right. So who are some of your personal like favorite fashion icons or designers that you look up to in the industry who have helped, like not helped, but like aided in motivation for you?
yeah, I've always been a fan of like a lot of my design inspiration always comes from like pop culture, something like big into like films, music, TV, stuff like that. So I'm only from pop culture people, like Grace Jones is like one of my biggest inspirations of like all time. Like she's just so fab, has had such an interesting life, like super masculine, but then like androgynous, but then feminine. Like I love just people like that, like David Bowie, Grace Jones, designers, more so like Oswald Boateng, like Paul Smith. They're more like menswear design people. Alexander McQueen was like one of my biggest like idols ever, like buying all of his books, just thinking that he was like just this amazing guy who had like all this talent. So really it like ranges from like, even I'm trying to think of like more like not even fashion people. Like, we love a Beyonce, we love like a Janet Jackson, like I love,
Yes.
just like honestly powerful Black people, powerful like really Black women, like owning who they are, owning their sexuality, and
Love
just
that.
like knowing who they are, would kind of be like a lot of my faves. Like there's so many, but I'm like trying to think off the top of my head. Little Kim,
Yeah.
just kind of like women in like all different kind of fields, like taking inspiration for how they just like present themselves and like own who they are.
That's awesome. What made you specifically, or what made you either choose, or what like got you into menswear fashion versus like women or kids?
Yeah. Honestly, because I feel like a lot of people, like I kind of feel like that's like the natural thing is like, okay, I want to do fashion design, like you do women's wear. And like I do love women's wear a lot, but I kind of was like looking at menswear and I'm like, menswear is so boring. Like,
Mhm.
but then it's not once I like got more into like researching about it. But I just felt like on kind of a more, I guess, global scale, like women's wear is so fun because they can do so many more things with it. Whereas menswear, like there's a lot of traditionalism that goes along with it,
For sure.
which in college was kind of like my entire, I guess, like thesis of how I thought about menswear. Is like things don't have to be so traditional. They don't have to be so black and white, which I think is even from when I graduated college to now, I'm, seeing the trend in like men being more comfortable in their femininity and men being more comfortable like wearing kind of whatever they want is really great to see because that was something I was always like an advocate for. Like it doesn't have to be like suits and ties and like all of these things. Like it can be fun just as
Right.
much as, women's wear, even though women also deserve to like have their fun because like women have suffered. So, it's been like really interesting seeing that shift, like being a menswear designer. And yeah, like I do really like menswear. Women's wear also is something where I'm still kind of like, here's like the catch 22 again, where I'm like, here I am, this woman being a menswear designer, but often being surrounded by a lot of men who, they are more closer to the customer base. So then
Right.
I'm kind of undervalued at times. And even though I like went to school for this, I've studied this, like I'm at this point kind of an expert in like what I'm talking about. So there kind of comes like the intersections of like, this is like kind of a challenging job, but I do still love like what I do and, always trying to find like how to like make menswear interesting.
That's awesome. It's really like exciting to hear you, like especially like I said before, like watching you like design for your dolls, and like even you designed your own prom dress, like, and now
Yes.
you're like
Yes.
actually like in the industry, like actively in it, really implementing the changes that need to be made,
Girl,
speaking to
trying
those
to.
norms, right? Especially like you said, like I feel like so often, men are expected to dress with like pants, suit, tie, like that is how where they're expected to dress. But even like you said, like now you're seeing more men become more comfortable in their femininity and they're wearing the skirts or, different styles in that realm where they're just, it's clothes at the end of the day. Like clothes don't have a gender, and
Yeah,
everybody tries to keep assigning everything to it.
right. Which is again so ironic given that the fashion industry's whole mantra is like being creative and expressing yourself through your garments. So, but then again, like looking at the industry, like working in it, being like there's still so many restriction and boxes that should be broken, in
Right.
theory. But of course, like, what's gonna like sell, da 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 da, like, all of these mindsets still very much need to kind of like get with the times, but
Exactly.
slowly but surely, hopefully we'll get there.
Yes, for sure. So for Sierra Robinson, where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?
Like what? Such a Such a heavy question. Definitely see myself kind of like still working, maybe in like 10 years, maybe having like my own brand, but in 5 years, maybe like working still, like doing really cool stuff, maybe having more of an idea of like, okay, like if I really want to have a brand, like what's that going to be about? Because definitely still all over the place where I'm like, do I want to like have my own this and like show here? Or do I just want to like have a store? Or do I like, kind of like figuring that out? But definitely just still on the rise of like looking at great opportunities, like going for them, and kind of seeing like where the future is going to take me. I never would have expected like freshman year of me when I was looking at design schools to be like in Ohio, like designing for
Right.
Abercrombie, but like it's been a fun ride so far that I've been here. So it's kind of just like following that ambition and seeing how far it'll take me until I fall flat on my face. So
So do you have any advice for anyone who is looking to who wants to get into fashion, especially like young Black individuals, giving them like a little idea of like what it would be like, just advice from your perspective overall?
yeah, I definitely would say you are your number one critic, but you're also your like number one fan, and needing to have the fan part override the critic part. So really truly, and it's like easier said than done, but like being your own number one fan and like being an advocate for yourself is so important. Because I look back on like where I struggled a lot in college, which is where I was like, trying to grasp with like, okay, people aren't liking like what I'm doing, but then me still trying to be confident in it. But then, all the self-doubt and stuff, and really just being like, you know what, I'm doing this. No one else is doing it. The fact that no one else is doing it makes it special because you're doing it. And that's enough. And like, that's what matters. So just kind of, being your own advocate and your own number one fan for your work is always going to be like key, because as much as, all these other people claim to maybe like, oh yeah, we're going to do this for you. Like, you and your work are going to be like this. So definitely view it like this. And if you're not proud of it at the end of the day, then what did you do all that for? Getting into design, just like do it. Literally, like I have friends who even have tried to or gotten into fashion without even like knowing designers. Like I was like in freshman year being like, oh my God, yeah, did you watch this show? Do you watch that show? And some of my friends were like, I literally like don't watch fashion shows. Like I have no idea who those people are. So it truly doesn't matter. Don't think you have to go in with like this crazy knowledge of all these people. I just did because like I get obsessed with things like that. Like once I'm obsessed, I have to know everything about it. So just, yeah, like go in, start doing stuff, like be super creative, be super, as we say at work, be scrappy, or just be super like, look at the resources that you have and just like make something out of it. You can make really great things. You can make really trash things. The trash things end up turning to great things. So just truly like don't limit your creativity thinking that you don't have like enough tools. And yeah, just kind of like, and also last thing, always love what you do, which I know is again cliche as hell, but like it's so important to, I'm lucky that I still have a passion and a drive for this. Like at this point, it's like 4 going on 5 years since I graduated high school, and like 2 years after graduating college. And I don't feel the need to be like, I'm going to switch my career, I'm going to do this. It's not a bad thing if you do. Completely fine, completely valid, because of course your wants and needs in life may change. But with a job in this industry, it is very cutthroat, especially for Black people, especially for Black women, because people, it's interesting because as high as like streetwear and hip hop culture is like so prevalent in fashion, they're not really caring about Black people a lot. So you, again, going back to the advocator part of the statement, you really are going to have to advocate for yourself. And a lot of times it's going to feel like you have no one on your team, on your back. Hopefully you get to a point in your career where like you do have people who will ride for you, but especially starting out, it's going to be like it's going to be you against the world. And this industry is just built on a lot of that, misogyny, being a woman in menswear, racism, being like a Black woman. So you're just going to like need to be prepared for that, because like it's not going to be sugar coated, and it's going to be sometimes very subtle, sometimes very overt, and like it's just going to happen. So being prepared for that. But if you just remain true to yourself, true to what you love, advocating for yourself and trying your hardest, and don't let people steer you the wrong way. If you truly believe that this is what you should be doing, then it's what you should be doing. And all the no's doesn't matter, because you're going to get a lot of yeses later. So after all that jumble, I would probably say that.
That's awesome. I think that even like a lot of the points you touched too are really for any creative like outlet or any kind of field or career in that. Just because, like you said, as Black women especially, a lot of the times we're looked down upon, or people kind of just brush over us, and it's like, hey, like we're still here, we're not going anywhere, and
Yeah.
you are your biggest critic, but you're also your biggest fan, and you have to, like you said, love what you do. And that's like one thing, even like with me with photography, like I always say, like I never want it to feel like a job. I always want it to be like, yeah, I love doing this, and I happen to just be making money as well, but I don't
Yeah.
want it to be like a chore kind of thing. And I feel like so many people wake up and they're like, oh, I hate my job.
Literally, which is where it's kind of being like, which is not bad if you want to like change, your career, but it should never, I don't think, be like, like I'm dreading doing this like fun thing that like years
Exactly.
ago was like super fun to me and now I hate. So
Right. And I
for
think
sure.
we're living in such a time where we're moving into having that freedom to have multiple careers and not stick to something specifically. Like I remember I was talking to my dad the other day, and he's like, he was reading something where most people in our age group are going to end up having 2 to 3 careers in their lifetime that they like take seriously and are super passionate about. And I think that's awesome. I mean, I don't think you have to stick with one thing for all of your life.
Yeah, no, I think that's super awesome too. Like I even know a few of my friends who, in different like have switched up their careers like 3, 4 times. And I think that that's like awesome, because I don't know, I've never really jived with the idea of like, oh, just because I'm doing this thing, I have to like do that for years and years and years. And
Right.
maybe because I am working like corporate job where like that is very much like just corporate in general is like, oh yeah, like I've been working, in this industry for like 20 years, or I've been working this particular job for 20 years. And I've always just found to be like, wow, like one thing for like years and years and years, like maybe just because I'm like mad indecisive, like hell, it takes me at least an hour and a half to pick like a movie to watch a night. Like,
Right.
I don't know about you, like I'm very much like, if I'm not going to like enjoy the shit out of this, like I do not want to be a part of it. So to me, it's
Exactly.
just like, this could be cool, but like what if there's something out there that's even cooler, and then what if there's
Right.
something out there that's even cooler than that, and like so, and I think just by nature I've always been like that, and I'm happy that with the whole shift because of COVID, with like people being able to be remote, they can get back into their hobbies and get back into things that they do these as side things, or they just do them as hobbies and keep them as passions, and having time for that is like so important, because not to rant about the 9 to 5 corporate system, but
Right.
like I'm glad that COVID has kind of shook that up for people to explore other opportunities other than their jobs.
Absolutely. Exactly. I think I'm just like, I love trying different things. Like, there's no harm in just testing the waters, see how it goes. If it fails, it fails, move on to the next thing. But
Yeah,
instead of getting like so butthurt and like stuck on one thing, especially now, so many people go to school for one thing and then don't even end up working in that field.
right.
So it's like, what harm does it do to try different things out and go from there? If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You just keep it pushing.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world for sure.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me. It was really nice one just to
Yes.
catch up with you. I feel like I haven't
Yes.
seen
Oh my
you in so
God.
long. I may need to
I
make
know.
a
Like,
trip to Ohio and come see you.
I know. Oh my God. Or more so, me take a trip to Florida, because it is
It's
gross
been
and
really
cold.
long.
And
Oh, really?
yeah, but like you're in sunny Florida, I'm in like cold Ohio. But yes, for sure.